The Deep Space Monitoring Station orbiting the gas giant Kestrel VI was quiet except for the soft hum of life support systems. Senior Scout Laskfor stared at his screen with 4 yellow eyes, boredom evident in his posture. His scales shimmered with a dull blue glow in the dim light of the command center. "Another primitive system," he muttered, clicking his mandibles together. "Why do they assign our best scouts to this empty sector?" His assistant, Tevenar, looked up from her own console. "Protocol requires all star systems be cataloged, sir, even the useless ones." Laskfor grunted and zoomed in on the 3rd planet of the yellow star. The readings showed clear signs of artificial radio signals, primitive combustion technology, and evidence of early nuclear development. Nothing special. Dozens of species reached this point before either destroying themselves or advancing to join the galactic community. Log it as pre-contact civilization. Development Stage 2. "Not worth the hegemony's attention," he said, already moving to the next system on his list. Little did Laskfor know that his casual dismissal would become one of the greatest mistakes in Valkyrie history. Diane Miller squinted at her computer screen in the darkened observatory. The midnight shift at the radio telescope array in New Mexico was usually quiet, but tonight was different. The strange signal pattern had returned. "Frank, come look at this," she called to her colleague. "It's back, and it's stronger." Frank Jordan shuffled over, coffee mug in hand, his tired eyes suddenly alert when he saw the readout. "That's no natural phenomenon. The pattern is too regular." Diane nodded, her heart racing. "And it's moving, Frank. Whatever is sending this isn't fixed in space like a star or galaxy. It's moving at speeds that would be impossible for any of our satellites or space junk." Frank leaned closer. "Are you saying what I think you're saying?" "I'm not saying anything officially," Diane replied carefully. "But off the record, yes, I think we're picking up signals from something not from Earth." Frank ran a hand through his thinning hair. "We need to run more tests before we tell anyone. Remember what happened to Bill when he claimed to find alien signals last year?" Diane remembered. Bill had been laughed out of the astronomy department. "These are different, more complex, and they repeat in exactly the same pattern every 17 minutes. She pulled up the previous night's readings and overlaid them with tonight's data. The match was perfect. "We need to notify Dr. Harris," Frank said, reaching for the phone. 3 days later, Diane and Frank sat in a crowded conference room at NASA headquarters. Dr. Harris had indeed taken their discovery seriously enough to call this emergency meeting with government officials. "The signals appear to be coming from just beyond Pluto's orbit," Diane explained to the room. "They contain mathematical sequences that cannot be random." A man in a dark suit, who had introduced himself only as Agent Clark, leaned forward. "And you're certain this isn't Russian? Chinese? Any other Earth power?" Frank shook his head. "The technology required to transmit from that location with that clarity would be beyond our current capabilities. And why would any Earth nation hide at the edge of our solar system when satellites in Earth orbit would be more effective?" The room fell silent as the implications sank in. "What do we do?" someone finally asked. Dr. Harris removed his glasses. "For now, we observe, we gather more data, and we prepare. If there is indeed someone watching us from the edge of our solar system, we need to know who they are and what they want." What none of them knew was that the Valkyrie scout ship was already preparing to leave, its mission complete. In its report back to the hegemony, Earth was classified as primitive developing world, no resources of value, no threat potential. The Valkyrie would establish minimal monitoring of the system, considering it unworthy of significant attention. It was the first mistake of many. They never expected what humanity would become, and by the time they realized their error, it would be too late. 5 years passed since the first detection of the strange signals. The world had changed in small but important ways. Governments around the globe quietly increased funding for space programs. New telescopes and listening posts appeared in remote locations. Something was happening behind the scenes, but the public remained focused on everyday concerns. Beyond the orbit of Pluto, Scout Commander Zeph Null watched the blue planet through advanced sensors. His scout ship floated silently, cloaked from Earth's primitive detection systems. "These humans advance quickly," Zeph Null noted, speaking to his second-in-command. "They've improved their propulsion systems twice in 5 years." Officer Pelmac clicked his mandibles dismissively. "Many species have quick technological growth just before they destroy themselves. These ones burn fossil fuels and split atoms. They'll be gone within a century." Zeph Null wasn't so sure. Something about these humans bothered him. "They're sending more machines to their nearby planets. The red one now has 16 monitoring devices and a small habitat dome." "Playing in their backyard," Pelmac said. "The hegemony conquered 12 star systems while these creatures were still learning to make fire. They'd pose no threat." Zeph Null nodded but made a note in his report anyway. The Valkyrie High Command should know that these humans were advancing faster than predicted. On Mars, Lieutenant Kate Boyd checked the readings on her tablet again. Something was wrong with the new sensor array. For the third time this week, it had detected unusual energy patterns at the edge of the solar system. "Colonel Winters, I'm getting those anomalous readings again," she said, approaching her commanding officer in the control room of Mars Base Alpha. Sam Winters looked up from his station. The base had been operational for only 8 months, and already they were having equipment problems. "Run a diagnostic," he said. "Probably just cosmic radiation interfering with the sensors." Kate frowned. "I already did, sir. Everything checks out normal. These readings don't match any known natural phenomenon in our database." Sam put down his coffee. "Show me." Kate pulled up the data on the main screen. A pattern of energy spikes appeared, occurring at regular intervals. "Could be a pulsar," Sam suggested. "Except it moves, sir. Whatever is causing these readings changed position 3 times in the last month, and it's always at the outer edge of our detection range." Sam stared at the screen for a long moment. "Send this data back to Earth. Marked priority for Dr. Alan Hayes at NASA." Kate nodded. "Do you think it's them?" "The visitors." Neither said the word aliens out loud. It had become an unspoken rule among the space program staff. "I think," Sam said carefully, "that we need to speed up our timeline for the new defense satellites." In the Grand Hall of the Valkyrie Council, High Commander Rakval addressed the gathered leaders. His scales gleamed bright gold in the ceremonial lighting. "The war with the Zentari Collective consumes our resources," he said. "We must focus our fleet on their expansion in the Cygnus sector." Ambassador Pelmac raised a clawed hand. "What of the developing worlds in the Orion Arm?" Several approached spaceflight capability. Rakval waved dismissively. "None pose any concern. Our scout ships monitor all potentially viable systems." "And the humans?" asked Elder Tevlon. Scout Commander Zeph Null reports unusual advancement rates. Rakval projected an image of Earth, a primitive world of divided nations and limited technology. They've barely reached their own moon. They fight among themselves over resources and territory. The council members chittered in amusement. "We have catalogued thousands of developing species," Rakval continued. "Most destroy themselves before achieving interstellar travel. These humans showed the same patterns. They aren't worth diplomatic effort or concern." The council voted unanimously to maintain minimal observation of Earth while focusing resources on the Zentari conflict. Meanwhile, in a secure facility deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, Dr. Alan Hayes reviewed the data from Mars Base Alpha. The readings confirmed what they had suspected for years. Earth was being washed. "Begin Phase 2, he told his team. "It's time to show our visitors that we know they're there." What the humans didn't reveal was how much they had already learned, and how quickly they were preparing for what might come next. The night sky over Iowa was clear and full of stars when it happened. George Porter stood on his porch, enjoying the evening air after a long day of farm work. His wife Linda brought him a glass of lemonade. "Beautiful night," she said, looking up. George nodded. "Sure is." Then they both saw it, a bright light cutting across the sky, moving too fast for a plane, but too slow for a shooting star. It left a trail of smoke and fire as it descended. "That's heading for the backfield," George said, already moving toward his truck. Linda followed close behind. They never made it. The object crashed with such force that the shock wave flattened everything within a half-mile radius. The Porter farm vanished in an instant. By morning, men in dark suits and military vehicles surrounded the crash site. A 10-mile perimeter was established. News reports called it a meteorite. It was anything but. Dr. Alan Hayes stared at the twisted metal and strange materials spread across the hangar floor. The crash had been devastating, but much of the alien craft remained intact. "We're sure there were no survivors," he asked the military officer beside him. "2 alien bodies recovered," Colonel Pete Davis confirmed. "Both dead on impact. We also lost 2 civilians." Helen nodded solemnly. The Porters' deaths would be recorded as a tragic accident. Their families would never know the truth. "What can you tell me about the ship?" Pete asked. Ellen walked around a large piece of hull material. "It's like nothing we've ever seen. The metal absorbs radar signals. That's why our detection systems missed it until it entered the atmosphere." He pointed to a damaged engine component. "Their propulsion technology is centuries beyond ours. But the design suggests they were in a hurry when they built this scout ship." "In a hurry?" "Yes. There are shortcuts, inefficiencies, like they mass-produced these vessels without optimizing the design." Alen picked up a small device. "And this? It's some kind of translator. It contains thousands of Earth languages." Pete frowned. "They've been studying us for a while." "And now," Alan said, "we get to study them." Intelligence Officer Ket Rin stood before the Valkyrie High Command, his scales a worried shade of green. "Scout Ship 9 has been lost," he reported. "Last transmission showed a critical engine failure near the human world." Grand Marshal Vextor leaned forward on his throne. "Were they detected?" "Unknown, Grand Marshal. The ship carried 2 crew members and standard observation equipment. If the humans recover the wreckage, they won't understand it," Vextor interrupted. "Their technology is too primitive to make sense of our systems." Ketrin hesitated. The ship's database contained information about our species and empire. If translated, "These humans can barely leave their own planet," Vextor said dismissively. "They fight wars with chemical explosives and projectile weapons. Do you suggest they pose a threat to the hegemony?" "No, Grand Marshal, but our protocols for contact with developing worlds would waste resources we need for the Zentari conflict." Vextor's decision was final. Double the observation posts near their system, but take no direct action. If these humans found the ship, they would see it as a natural object from space. They lack the context to recognize it as our technology. Ketrin bowed, but his worry remained. Something about these humans made him uneasy. 6 months after the crash, Dr. Alan Hayes stood in a secure underground facility, watching as engineers assembled the first prototype. "We've reversed engineered about 20% of their technology," he told the president during her inspection tour. "The material sciences alone have advanced our capabilities by decades." President Olivia Scott studied the strange metal components. "And you're certain they don't know we have this?" "As far as we can tell, they believe the ship was destroyed completely. They haven't changed their observation patterns." Olivia nodded. "How long until the prototype is ready?" 3 months for initial testing. But this is just the beginning. What we've learned from their propulsion system will revolutionize our space program." As they walked away, neither noticed the small device on the workbench briefly flash with light. A backup transmitter, damaged but not completely destroyed, sending one final, weak signal to the stars. 10 years passed since the crash in Iowa. The world had changed in ways most people never noticed. New materials appeared in everyday products. Solar power became incredibly efficient. Medical devices made impossible leaps in capability. Few connected these advances to the secret work happening in underground labs around the world. In a massive hangar beneath the Nevada desert, Admiral Judy Morris walked alongside the gleaming hull of humanity's first true starship. The UES Pathfinder stood ready for its maiden voyage, a testament to human ingenuity and reverse engineering. "Beautiful, isn't she?" Steve Collins said, falling into step beside the Admiral. As chief engineer, he had overseen the ship's construction from the first blueprint to final assembly. "Will she fly?" Judy asked, running her hand along the smooth metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. "Better than anything the Valkyrie have," Steve said with quiet confidence. "Their shield technology was impressive, but flawed. We fixed the power distribution issues and doubled the efficiency." Judy raised an eyebrow. "You improved alien technology." "That's what humans do," Steve shrugged. "We see something, we make it better. The Valkyrie have been using the same designs for centuries. No innovation, no improvement." Judy nodded. Intelligence reports suggested the Valkyrie were technologically stagnant, relying on their vast numbers rather than advancement to maintain their empire. "Navigation systems check out," called a technician from inside the ship. "All green across the board." "When do we launch?" Judy asked. "Tomorrow at dawn. The President will be watching from the White House." Neither of them spoke the deeper truth that humanity's future might depend on this ship's success. Aboard the Valkyrie monitoring station, Watch Commander Zarvel stared at the sensor readings with growing concern. For the third time this cycle, energy signatures from Earth showed patterns that shouldn't be possible for such a primitive species. Could their nuclear technology have advanced this quickly? He asked his science officer. Tevlar adjusted the sensors. "Unlikely. Even with accelerated development, they shouldn't have this level of energy control for at least another century." "Yet there it is," Zarvel said, pointing to the screen. "Energy spikes consistent with controlled fusion, but without the radiation signature we'd expect from primitive attempts. Should we alert High Command?" Zarvel considered this. The last officer who raised concerns about the humans had been reassigned to a distant outpost. The hegemony had bigger concerns with the Centauri War growing more intense each cycle. "Continue monitoring," he decided. "If they launch anything beyond their moon, notify me immediately." High Commander Rakval stood before a projection of the Orion Arm, highlighting Valkyrie territories in blue and Centauri expansion in red. The war was not going well. "We've lost 3 more outposts in the Cygnus sector," he told the assembled officers. "The Centauri push closer to our core worlds with each passing cycle." Intelligence Officer Ket Rin, older now but still serving, stepped forward. "Grand Marshal, while we focus on the Centauri, we may be overlooking another potential concern. The humans again." Vex Tor sighed. "Your obsession with this primitive species grows tiresome. Our long-range sensors detect unusual energy signatures from their world." Ketrin insisted. "They're advancing faster than any species we've encountered. Primitives playing with stolen technology are of no consequence to our empire," Rakval declared. "The scout ship lost there a decade ago had minimal technology, nothing that could threaten us." Ketrin wanted to argue, but knew it was pointless. The hegemony had ruled the stars for so long they couldn't imagine any threat from a young species. The UES Pathfinder rose silently from its underground hangar as the first light of dawn touched the desert. Unlike the rockets of old, there was no flame, no smoke, no thunderous roar, just a slight distortion of air as it accelerated upward. Inside the bridge, Captain Ben Walsh watched as Earth fell away below them. "All systems nominal," reported his first officer, Lieutenant Laura Dias. "Valkyrie observation post remains unaware of our presence." Ben nodded. The ship's stealth systems were working perfectly. "Set course for Mars. Let's see what this ship can really do." As the Pathfinder accelerated to speeds no human vessel had ever achieved, Ben allowed himself a small smile. The aliens beyond Pluto had no idea what was coming. Humanity had taken its first true step to the stars, and they had done it right under the Valkyries' noses. 20 years after the Iowa crash, humanity had spread beyond the solar system in ways the Valkyrie never detected. 4 nearby star systems now hosted human colonies, all hidden beneath stealth shields based on improved Valkyrie technology. General Eric Burton stood at the viewport of the military base on Ta City II, watching as fighter ships practiced formation drills. The base, built inside a hollowed-out asteroid, was humanity's largest military installation outside the solar system. "Latest stealth test results, sir," said Colonel Maria Wilson, handing him a tablet. Eric reviewed the data with a satisfied nod. "Dr. Williams has outdone herself again. The new system makes our ships completely invisible to Valkyrie sensors." "The Valkyrie still have no idea we're here," Maria said. "Their patrol ships pass through this system twice a month and detect nothing." "How many ships do we have ready?" Eric asked. 50 capital ships and 200 fighters, fully armed and crewed. Another 30 capital ships in final testing. Eric handed back the tablet. "Good. According to our intelligence, the Valkyrie-Centauri war is reaching a critical stage. We need to be prepared for any outcome." What neither of them said was the truth that all human military leaders now knew. Humanity's fleet was more advanced than anything the Valkyrie possessed. In just 20 years, humans had not only caught up to their unwitting teachers but had surpassed them. Ambassador Pelnak's scales flickered with stress colors as he addressed the Valkyrie High Council. The war with the Centauri was going badly. "We've lost the Orion defense line," he reported. "The Centauri push closer to our core systems each cycle." Grand Marshal Vextor, now old but still powerful, growled in frustration. "We need buffer zones, systems we can sacrifice while we rebuild our fleet." "What of the developing worlds in the nearby sectors?" suggested Council Elder Jivtan. "The humans, for instance. Their system lies between us and the advancing Centauri front." Pelnak brought up a holographic display of Earth. "Our latest intelligence suggests they've achieved basic interplanetary travel. Nothing that would threaten us, but enough to make them useful as a buffer." "Have they detected our observation posts?" asked Vextor. "No evidence of that," Pelnak replied. "They appear to be focused on colonizing their neighboring planets. Simple trade and resource gathering." This assessment was based on carefully crafted human communications, deliberately transmitted for Valkyrie ships to intercept. For years, humanity had fed the Valkyrie exactly what they expected to see: a young species taking its first cautious steps into space. "Establish diplomatic contact," Vextor ordered. "Offer them protection in exchange for basing rights. Their system would make an excellent forward position against the Centauri." Pelnak bowed. "As you command, Grand Marshal." In the Oval Office, President Olivia Scott met with her military and scientific advisors. The wall screens showed real-time feeds from stealth satellites tracking Valkyrie fleet movements. "Our intelligence network confirms the Valkyrie plan to contact us officially," said Defense Secretary Jack Rivera. "They see us as potential pawns in their war." Olivia smiled thinly. "After ignoring us for decades, now they need us." Dr. Grace Williams, the brilliant scientist who had perfected humanity's stealth technology, spoke next. "Madam President, the battle fleet is ready. All ships are equipped with the EMP weapons specifically designed to disable Valkyrie systems without destroying their ships." The President nodded. "And our colonies?" "All 7 colonies are fully operational and protected by stealth shields," Jack replied. "The Valkyrie have no idea they exist." "What about the Centauri?" asked Olivia. "Do they pose a threat to us?" "Unknown," Jack admitted, "but they're fully committed to their war with the Valkyrie. They haven't expanded in our direction." Olivia stood and walked to the window, looking out at the Washington Monument gleaming in the distance. For 20 years, humanity had prepared in secret, learning everything about their unwitting adversaries while revealing nothing of their true capabilities. "The Valkyrie think they're coming to offer us protection," she said quietly. "Let them come. It's time they learned who really needs protecting in this galaxy. Fleet Commander Vegdur stood on the bridge of the Valkyrie flagship Dominant Will, leading a fleet of 12 warships toward the Sol system. His mission was simple: impress the humans with Valkyrie might, then offer them protection in exchange for allowing military bases on their planets. "We will arrive at the edge of their system in 3 cycles," his navigation officer reported. "Excellent," Vegdur said. "Prepare the translation systems and diplomatic packages. Remember, these are primitives who have barely reached their own moon. Our ships will overwhelm them." His second-in-command, Sub-Commander Zelvac, approached with a concerned expression. "Sir, long-range scans detect unusual energy readings near the human homeworld." "What kind of readings?" "Unknown, sir. They appear and disappear from our sensors. Perhaps a sensor malfunction." Vegdur dismissed the concern with a wave of his clawed hand. "The humans possess nothing that could confuse our sensors. Continue on course." Little did he know that 50 human vessels were already tracking his approach, hidden by stealth technology that made them invisible to Valkyrie systems. Aboard the UES Defender, Admiral Paul Fisher watched the holographic display showing the incoming Valkyrie fleet. After decades of preparation, the moment had finally arrived. "All ships report ready, Admiral," Captain Lisa Powell said from her station. "Stealth systems functioning perfectly. The Valkyrie have no idea we're here." Paul nodded. "And the EMP weapons?" "Calibrated specifically for Valkyrie systems," Lisa confirmed. "We can disable their entire fleet without destroying any ships or harming their crews." The bridge was quiet as the crew went about their duties with practiced efficiency. Unlike the Valkyrie, who relied on intimidation and overwhelming force, human ships were designed for precision and stealth. "Communication from Earth Command." "Sir," reported the communications officer. "President Scott has authorized Operation First Contact." Hall took a deep breath. "Send to all ships. Deploy as planned. Remember, this is not about revenge. This is about showing the Valkyrie that humanity will not be a pawn in their game." Vegdur was recording his official greeting to the humans when the attack came. One moment, his fleet was proceeding in perfect formation. The next, warning alarms blared across every ship as systems began shutting down. "What's happening?" he demanded as the bridge lights flickered and died, replaced by dim emergency lighting. "Unknown, Commander," his operations officer shouted. "Some kind of electromagnetic pulse has disabled our main systems. Weapons, engines, and shields are offline." "Impossible," Vegdur roared. "Where did it come from?" The answer came as 50 human vessels suddenly appeared around his fleet, dropping their stealth fields now that the Valkyrie posed no threat. "Incoming transmission," reported his communications officer, the fear evident in his voice. It's in our language." The main screen flickered to life, showing a human female in a military uniform. To Vegdur's shock, she spoke perfect Valkyrie. "Valkyrie Fleet, this is Captain Lisa Powell of the United Earth Defense Force. Your ships have been temporarily disabled. Do not attempt to restore weapon systems, or you will be disabled permanently." Vegdur stared in disbelief. "How is this possible? How do they know our language?" "Commander," Zelvac whispered, "look at their ships. The design. It incorporates Valkyrie technology, but improved." The truth dawned on Vegdur with terrible clarity. The crashed scout ship from decades ago. The humans hadn't just found it. They had understood it, reverse-engineered it, and improved upon it. "We've been studying you for 30 years, the human captain continued. "While you dismissed us as primitives, we learned everything about your technology, your tactics, your language. Your ships are now surrounded, and similar human fleets are currently in position at your homeworld and major colony systems." The bridge fell silent as the implications became clear. The Valkyrie, who had dominated the stars for centuries, had just been outmaneuvered by a species they had considered beneath their notice. "The hegemony has 2 choices," Captain Powell concluded. "Peaceful coexistence or total defeat. Choose wisely, Commander. You have 1 hour to respond. On the Valkyrie homeworld of Kelthoria, panic spread through the High Council chambers. The impossible had happened. Grand Admiral Zexfin had just reported human ships appearing simultaneously above every major Valkyrie world and military base. How did they get past our defenses? Demanded Grand Marshal Vextor, his scales pale with shock. Their stealth technology exceeds anything we possess, Zexfin admitted. Our sensors detected nothing until they chose to reveal themselves. Intelligence Officer Ket Rin, who had warned about the humans for decades, spoke quietly from his seat. I tried to tell you, they are not like other species. They adapt, improve, innovate at rates we cannot match. A communication officer rushed into the chamber. Grand Marshal, we're receiving transmissions from the human vessels. They're broadcasting on all frequencies, in perfect Valkyrie. The main screen activated to show a human male in formal diplomatic attire. He bowed slightly in the traditional Valkyrie greeting. I am Ambassador Daniel Clark of United Earth. I speak to you from a human vessel currently in orbit above your homeworld. Similar ships are positioned above all major Valkyrie worlds and military installations. Vextor snarled. This is an act of war. No, Clark replied calmly. This is an act of necessity. For 30 years, we have watched the Valkyrie hegemony. We know of your war with the Zentari. We know you plan to use Earth as a buffer zone in that conflict. Vextor had no response to this. The humans spoke the truth. At this moment, the Zentari prepare their final assault against your weakened empire, Clark continued. They believe victory is at hand. The council erupted in shouts and accusations until Vextor raised a hand for silence. What do you want, human? He asked. To watch us fall? No, Clark said. We offer a choice. End your war with the Zentari. Join a new galactic cooperative where all species work together as equals, or face a two-front war against both the Zentari and humanity. The council chamber fell silent as the implications became clear. Aboard the human flagship Horizon, Daniel Clark ended the transmission and turned to President Olivia Scott, who had traveled to witness this historic moment. Do you think they'll agree? Daniel asked. Olivia watched the Valkyrie homeworld turning slowly below them. They have no choice. Their empire is collapsing. The Zentari close in from one side, and we control their core systems. General Eric Burton, now commanding humanity's combined fleet, joined them at the viewport. Our intelligence indicates the Valkyrie Supreme Council is voting now. The military faction wants to fight, but the civilian leaders are pushing for acceptance. And the Zentari? Asked Olivia. They've agreed to peace talks, though reluctantly, Daniel replied. They were eager for revenge against the Valkyrie. When we showed them our capabilities, they became more flexible. In a quiet office on Earth, Dr. Alan Hayes sat at his desk. Now old and retired, he had watched humanity transform from a single-planet species to the dominant force in this section of the galaxy. On his wall hung a small piece of metal, a fragment from the crashed Valkyrie ship that had started it all 3 decades ago. His computer chimed with an incoming message from space. The Valkyrie had agreed to the cooperative. The centuries-long era of hegemony rule was over. Ellen smiled as he remembered that day long ago, when a damaged alien ship had fallen from the sky. The Valkyrie had seen humans as primitives, barely worth monitoring. That mistake had cost them their empire. His phone rang. It was Frank Jordan, his old colleague from the observatory who had first detected the alien signals all those years ago. Did you hear? Frank asked excitedly. They signed. I heard. Alan replied. Funny how things turn out, isn't it? They watched us for decades, thinking we were just another developing species. They never expected humanity to become what we did, Frank said. No, Alan agreed, looking at the ship fragment on his wall. And by the time they realized their mistake, it was too late. In the vast chamber of the new Galactic Cooperative, representatives from Earth, Kelthoria, and Center signed the historic treaty. The galaxy would never be the same again.